Remember when the slam dunk competition was a thing? Ah, the good old days. Welcome to the Maximize Your Medicare podcast. I'm J.O. I'm the author of Maximize Your Medicare, Understanding Medicare, Protecting Your Health, and Minimizing Costs. The 2019 edition is available everywhere in paperback and ebook format. You can find out more information on www.maximizeyourmedicare.com. There's a free newsletter and a YouTube channel, Maximize Your Medicare. You'll be able to find it anywhere, everywhere online. For first-time listeners, today's podcast and any other podcast, they don't represent financial advice. While I'm qualified, licensed, and permission to do so, I would need to know a lot more about you. So the other day, I reappeared on the Art Lewis Show on a radio station in Mid-Michigan. 7 years ago, Art was good enough to host me for 2 hours on his radio show. And over the last 7 years, he's hosted me a number of times a year. Not only is he a Medicare eligible beneficiary, but in addition to that, he is genuinely curious and interested in different topics and able to relate them to everyone in the listening audience. While there may be bigger radio stations, there are no superior radio hosts. I can tell you this because of the quality of questions and follow-up questions. Nothing in this podcast and the recording of the interview has been scripted. I literally hand him a few different topics without any specific conclusion, and I let him just direct the conversation, which I know he's been able to do skillfully, not only with me, but with others. With no further ado, we begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We welcome back a guest who's been with us many times. Every time he has an alliteration of his book, he's back, but he's also back other times too. He has written the book called Maximize Your Medicare. The 2019 edition is now out. It's number 7 in his revisions. And we say good morning to J.O.
Good morning, Art.
Thanks for having me. Number 7 already. I can remember number 1, and I went, wow, that's a nice book, you know. Here we are 7 editions later.
Thank you so much for your support over the years, Art.
Does Medicare change that much?
What is changing is certain changes to rules. For example, 2019 actually has a brand new enrollment period called the open enrollment period. We're in the middle of it now. It will end on March 31st.
This is a new enrollment period. Is there still an old enrollment period?
So it is actually replacing a period that used to exist from January 1st to actually February 14th.
So the window's moved.
The windows have moved, and it's been expanded. Your rights and options actually have expanded during this period. So
they gave us something?
They gave you something.
No, come on. All right, so let's talk about a number of things. First of all, I know you mentioned this to me before the show. This has to do with a specific group of people in a local community who are about to lose their benefits in retirement. Explain this, and who is it, and what is it about?
It's right. It's actually Hampton Township in Essexville, that the existing retirees are losing their retiree health benefits. Now, before we get started, let me first say that, this is not uncommon. In other words, the city of Detroit, obviously being the largest city closest to here, where the persons have faced similar fiscal pressure, and that was the very difficult choice being made. So I'm not throwing stones at the decision-making of having to do that. That is happening everywhere. There's no discrimination on location or size of community. This is going to be occurring on an ongoing basis.
Basically, we're living longer, costs are rising, and they can't afford to pay for it anymore. So is that basically it?
Otherwise, you would end up having to cut existing services to the community at large. And so the difficult choice is having to be made.
So they're about to lose their health care. Now, since we're talking about retirees, I speculated before the program most of them probably are Medicare eligible. Most, maybe not all, but I would guess most are, right?
Yes, I think that would be fair to say.
But if if their loss of benefits falls outside of the window for Medicare, do they have some special allowance to be able to still sign up for Medicare?
And this is one of the graceful, very excellent parts about Medicare, which is that when these types of events occur, that in fact it allows for special enrollment periods. And incredibly, but true, is that in certain instances, it actually affords persons, or it makes available a wider set of benefits to the person. And years ago, Art, I'm not sure if you remember, we got a call where a local health carrier was having financial difficulty. As a result, one of the Medicare Advantage plans closed. It did open this window. It allowed this particular person's husband, who was a cancer patient, to obtain much wider, superior health benefits under that particular situation. These are called special enrollment periods. And for those retirees in Hampton who are going to be losing their retiree health benefits, a similar side door has opened.
And these are what you call side doors then?
And it's just the way to make it so that, this difficult jargonese can be easily understood by everyday people.
Well, let's spend a moment or two talking about the alphabet soup, because that's about to change too. The alphabet soup, folks, is those supplement plans that you buy to fill in the blanks, so to speak. What your Medicare doesn't cover, these plans might. And the most popular of all those plans is Plan F, which literally covers you from $1, in effect. Is it too good? Why is it going away?
Well, I think you pointed it out, which is that it covers from $1. Meaning there's another plan, Plan C, and which is not as dominant or prevalent in locations, but it pays for the Part B deductible. And for persons on Medicare, they're familiar with what that Part B deductible is. Under Medigap's Plan C and F, those plans cover the Part B deductible.
What's the difference between C and F? What does C not cover that F does?
C doesn't cover, for example, the Part B excess charge.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So what you have is, as part of a piece of legislation that was passed years ago, what ended up happening is Plan C and F are scheduled to end, meaning that
C and F
will both end to new applicants. Now, existing policyholders can keep the plan, but new applicants will not be allowed in, and that will begin on January 1st.
So someone like me who has Plan F, as long as I'm happy with it, and I am, I should never think about getting rid of it because I can't get it back, right?
Well, aside from the use of the word never, Art.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. We are dealing with the government, aren't we? So that's
yes, if this is in all sincerity is the true instance of, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan.
Finally, we got it.
We are there.
We are finally there. Wonderful. Gee, my goodness gracious. Well, so I guess the question then becomes, and one other thing, Plan F, which is going to go away, am I correct that is the only one of the supplements that provides foreign coverage?
No, there are other plans.
Oh, there are others that do provide foreign coverage, where they pay you X amount of dollars per day if you're...
That is correct. You would have to pay a deductible, and then there's coinsurance up to $50,000, I want to say, was the lifetime maximum benefit. But I don't want to say that those are the only plans, because you'd asked about why the revisions and ongoing revisions, and if I had to summarize the biggest difference from the 2013, the first edition, to today, the most dramatic difference is the narrowing difference, meaning the highly improved state of Medicare Advantage. The market share of Medicare Advantage has increased enormously.
All right,
I don't think we're going back from that trend.
All right, so let's so everybody understands, explain Medicare Advantage and how it differs from supplemental plans.
Sure. So Medicare Advantage, Medicare Advantage are managed care plans. This is HMO, PPO. These are, and the most important things, whenever I speak in public, I tell persons that the most important things to understand is this is an annual contract. It runs January to January, always. So, in addition to that, you must have Part A and Part B. The important things here are to understand the fact that you have a network involved. Now, the definition of network, the difficulty, the complication of Medicare is people see the word network. But the reality is the way the networks work in Medicare are slightly different than when you had an employer-provided HMO, for example. And so because of these two facts, which is that you have an annual contract network, though the implication of that is all of the terms and conditions are going to change every year. So just as being a wise consumer means that you'll want to check every year, because on the other hand, market highly competitive.
All right, so let's look at that Advantage plan for a moment. And my understanding of it is that it includes, you have to have A and B to get it.
That's correct.
But it includes your prescription plan, so you don't have a D per se, right? It's part of the Advantage plan?
In most cases, that is correct. It is integrated into the Medicare Advantage plan, and I will use this moment here because my anecdotal evidence across the country, meaning comparison of how Medicare Advantage is working, is that the sellers of Medicare Advantage, the carriers, have been aggressive and have done a very effective job in lowering the prescription cost for seniors. In extreme cases, and here locally, inside of Michigan, there's even a case where a particular type of insulin has $0 copay, which is literally thousands of dollars a year. So, but yes, to your point, yes, integrated in most cases. There are certain plans without the prescription portion that someone can intentionally choose.
And is it from $1 or is there a copay?
And here's where you're talking about all of the moving terms in the annual contract. Every single detail is subject to change. And so in Michigan, in most counties, 30-plus plans exist on Medicare Advantage.
Wow.
Of different stripes.
Right. We'll come back and talk. This is going to be too much before I take a break.
Okay.
We'll take a break, and then we will come back with more. J.O. is our guest. If you have any questions about Medicare, give us a call, 752-6111, toll-free, 866-790-WSGW. We are back with you on the Art Lewis Show. In studio with me is J.O., author of Maximize Your Medicare. He's also a certified financial planner and charter life underwriter and a whole bunch of initials after his name. But we are talking about Medicare this morning. There has been a lot of talk, and I keep Jay out of the political end of things on purpose because he doesn't want to cross that line. But I do have to ask, there has been a lot of talk about expanding Medicare, and some folks on one side of the political aisle have actually suggested there should be Medicare for everyone, without telling us how we're going to pay for it. What's going to happen? What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting because now the basketball, the burden of proof is now going to be shifted, meaning that the opponents to the Affordable Care Act, I think, without a political horse in the race, I think it's fair to say that opponents of the Affordable Care Act did not do a great job in voicing their concerns about the Affordable Care Act and presenting a coherent, well-articulated plan.
That's the big part
to others.
Yeah, they wanted to get rid of it, but what are they going to replace it with? They didn't come up with.
And now that burden has now shifted to the other side of the aisle. Meaning that I think there's going to be a large amount of confusion about what precisely that means. Medicare for all is certainly, an attractive, intuitively pleasing phrase.
Especially if you've written a book about it.
We'll get to that soon. But now, what does that actually mean? Medicare for all sounds correct, and then people then get asked the second question: do you understand this ends all private health insurance companies, including your employer-provided plan? All of them.
Well, okay, does it though? Let me ask this question. Let me ask it this way, theoretical, because you understand these things far better than I do. Is there not? And I almost don't believe I'm saying this because of my thoughts about private insurance.
Sure.
Is there not room for a hybrid? And by that I mean Medicare for all, A and B, and just like we have supplements now, the supplemental health insurance offered by private companies, and rather than government dictating what they are, let the private marketplace determine what those supplements are. Would that not be feasible?
Well, first of all, I think that some variation, a very close variation to that is being suggested, and that let's just call Medicare for more.
For more, okay.
For more. Meaning, yes, maybe we don't know what the exact, end point is. And when I said the burden of proof has now switched, meaning now the persons who are trying to wave the flag of Medicare for all, Medicare for more, what you suggested, whether or not that's going to be correctly explained to the population, whether or not they will understand it correctly, is going to be a difficult task. But yes, back to your point, which is it in theory an idea that you could have a base set being provided by the federal government, and then on top of that, individuals then selecting, much like persons on Medicare now, whether that be a Medicare Advantage lookalike or a supplement lookalike? Is that all feasible? In theory, the answer is yes. But then, of course, the inevitable question is, how are you going to pay?
Well, and that, of course, is always the question. But it seems to me that that kind of hybrid would satisfy both sides. Those that are calling for universal health care, well, they're getting a part of that. And those that are calling for competitive health care, they're getting a part of that. And it just seems to me that we need to look at compromise, which they're not very good at.
We can't agree on the city dog catcher at the moment.
That's it. You got it. You got it. But this is, these are issues that aren't going to go away. And as much as I don't like the idea of government providing everything, so to speak, as a user of Medicare, I have to say it's fabulous. I don't pay any more for Medicare and all of the coverage that I have from $1 with Plan F,
right,
than I did before when I had huge deductibles and everything else in the private insurance world, and I have better insurance. So I think from that standpoint, it's wonderful. The problem is it's going to go broke if they don't fix it.
And here's your issue, is that the demographic reality is that inside the government sits a reserve pot. Let's just call it reserve pot, and there are going to be technical terms that you can read on the internet.
It's a bunch of IOUs, yeah.
But you've already paid when you've paid for taxes.
Right.
Part of the payroll tax does go to the Medicare Trust Fund. Well, the issue is if you're trying to expand the number of beneficiaries in there, meaning that my age division gets the ability to have government-provided Part A and Part B.
You haven't paid in as long.
Correct.
Yeah.
If I'm able to purchase it, we actually do have a look at how much those parts cost. Because, for example, today, if you're 66 years old and you have not paid into the Social Security system for 10 years, 40, quarters of coverage is their technical term, then you can buy it. You can buy it with a check, $440 a month for Part A alone. And then Part B. So now we're at $570 a month for Part A and Part B with the deductible, and then the 20% with no out-of-pocket maximum. So now we're in. This is why I'm saying I think that the very difficult challenge is going to be to articulate, to explain. Crazy people write books and revise it for 7 years in order to. And I can tell you that there are 60 million Medicare beneficiaries now, and it does not matter where I've gone. It does not matter the health situation or the financial background of the audience. Don't understand the card from the beginning.
There's one part of it, though, that not only has to be considered with Medicare, but also Social Security, and that is that the actuarial tables have changed. 40 years ago, they expect you to take Social Security at 65 and die at 66. Now you take it at 66 and you live to 90, and there's fewer people supporting you on it. And that's the problem they're running into, isn't it? We're living a lot longer. We're a lot healthier.
And you have this, and you represent the baby boomers, represent the largest generation in American history. We can't get around the fact
that they're coming into that period. They're coming into that time.
They're here now. And the reality is that when people ask, well, why do you write this book about this particular topic? It's because we know that there's a lot of political debate. We know there are these, accusations. Well, the insurance company's trying to rip me off. The doctor is trying to overcharge. The pharmaceutical. It's easy to try to identify a party to blame. But the reality is sitting in the background, the ones that we cannot change, that are the inevitable, inherent causes of stress to the system, are the fact that there's 60 million people
more
in Medicare.
Yeah.
And we've got a partially government-funded system, and we have fewer people paying less money into it.
All right. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. If you have any questions about Medicare, you can give us a call, 752-6111, toll free, 866-790-WSGW, and talk to J.O., a nationally recognized expert on Medicare. Back with you in studio with me is J.O., authored the book Maximize Your Medicare on its 7th edition now, the 2019 edition of Maximize Your Medicare, Understanding Medicare, Protecting Your Health and Minimizing Costs. We also, along with this, we all got new Medicare cards where they took our Social Security numbers off and gave us new numbers. How's that working out?
Well, I think that people appreciate the idea that you don't have identity theft as a result of someone unknowingly turning over their Medicare card,
right,
where it has your Social Security number right on it. That all said, it's pretty confusing. You've got a very random set of characters there. And anecdotally, I can tell you that carriers are having some difficulties at certain times because an O looks like a 0. Or the small letter L looks like a number 1. And what really happens is that applications get read and then they have to be compared to your data at the Medicare system. Well, if the 0 is an O, you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then the worries start to begin. So we've had quite a number of instances, actually, where that has happened. And, we've been able to intervene and, of course, ultimately sort it out. In other words, government and carrier are not going to run away from their obligation. I would never say that is going to be the end, result. Nevertheless, it's unsettling. Unsettling for the applicant, no question.
All right, I want to go back. This occurred to me during the break. I want to go back and talk a little bit about Plan C and F, particularly F, because that's the one I have. But
sure,
since those plans are going to disappear for new applicants, do the insurance companies that provide these have us trapped financially? By that I mean they know I want to keep my Plan F. It's gone. And if I want to keep it, I'm going to pay for it. Am I going to find outrageous increases in the bill?
No, I don't think so. Not for that reason. not for that.
Yeah, for other reasons.
No,
Yeah.
and I
So
think
the
that
rules still apply. In other words, they have to spend 85%. Is it 85% or something?
It's 80% for that, and I think that it is an important distinction, which is the very confusing thing about financial matters generally is you just get the result and you just find the one reason that is easily identifiable and saying that's to blame, that's the culprit for the entirety. Well,
rarely is it, yeah.
It's more subtle, more nuanced than that. But to your question exactly, the carriers still have something called the medical loss ratio rule. Okay, that is a federal regulation, 80% has to be spent on claims, or you get a refund. And I already know this works because our existing clients get refunds, small amounts, hopefully. You don't want to have a huge amount because that means you've been charged
too much,
outrageously running. That's correct. So that is not the reason. The question is going to be how the carriers have set up your compatriots in a classroom, right? Because it's based off of that. So whether or not your classroom, you'll forgive, my simplistic analogy comparison, meaning that if the entire class gets sick, but can you really control that? Can you really outguess that? I just don't find that a productive use of time. That's my own personal Jay's opinion, meaning that the sellers, the carriers, leave the computing to them. They have it, meaning that kind of sectioning off classrooms in a periodic way, that happens now. That's happening now in Plan G. That's happening now in all the other Medigap plans. That every few years, new carriers enter. So there are limits here. To give you an idea on how competitive the market is, yesterday, I met with clients from Ingham County, just outside of Lansing. The man was turning 65 years old. We were looking at Medigap. Inside a $4, $5 a month range were more than 10 sellers. 10. Inside of $5 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that it's very convenient to be very skeptical and look for the worst case scenario. But in this instance, medical loss ratio disallows rampant increases just for sport. And on the other hand is fierce competition.
So conversely, can I say then, if for example, my Plan F carrier, raises me $10 a month, let's say, is it reasonable for me to assume then that their cost ratio was over 80%, so they're bringing the premiums up to get back to that 80%?
Now, they cannot claw back old. So let's just say, for example, they undercharged.
Right.
And it caused a loss. You cannot, the next year, claw back that.
You can't make it up.
No.
Okay.
All you can do is, given the facts now,
here's the rate.
Here is what we believe, given the information that we have, what we will look like next year.
So still have to stay at that 80%. That's the number.
That is correct. And that's what I'm saying is that I see lots of, headlines, tweets, things like that, and, hot takes. And we live in that kind of society now, and I don't think we're getting away from that anytime soon. That all said, is that the actual cause?
All right, we'll be back. J.O. is our guest. Maximize Your Medicare. We'll tell you how to find the book and everything when we return. Back with you here on WSGW with J.O., who is the author of the book Maximize Your Medicare. Among other things, he's also a certified financial planner and has a company called GH2 Benefits. Let's talk about the book for a minute. Where is it available? How do people get it if they're interested in the book?
Certainly the first place that person should go is online, maximizeyourmedicare.com.
Oh, that's easy enough to remember.
There is a free newsletter, and it comes out weekly. In fact, I sent it out yesterday because normally I send it out on Saturdays. I'm here with you. little updates and also links to podcast videos in everyday language. And then, of course, there's the advanced version, which has to do with, the firm that you mentioned, GH2 Benefits, which is, for the persons who really need the deep dive. There are limits to what I say here. You've known that over the 7 years.
We have to understand that you're a financial planner. You sell product.
Correct.
You represent companies. And
correct.
so you have to mind your manners when it comes to speaking to some controversial things, let's say.
Well, it's not only that, but, carrier, you will not, for example, you've never heard me say the name of a carrier that I suggest that carrier.
Right.
Not in 7 years, not in multiple times.
We've talked about carriers because they may be changing or pulling out or doing things, but never a recommendation.
No. And that does not mean that all the carriers are the same. And even we talked about Medicare Advantage, for example. Well, it gets worse in other financial matters. Worse. Because Medicare, the beauty of it, the grace of it, of course, is that literally if you are turning 65, the same rules, the same definitions, it does not matter what your financial resources are. It does not matter your location or history or anything. You have the same access as your neighbors who have far different circumstances. And that has made it more applicable to many, certainly.
So, let's kind of look ahead, Jay, guess, or your best educated guess, let's put it that way, of what Medicare may look like 5 years from now.
Well, I think what you see occurring right now in what's going to happen in the political arena is going to affect it. And it's going to affect it in a fairly fundamental way, even in the absence of Medicare for all or Medicare for more, even in the what we are about to witness here in the national election. Even in that absence, we're going to have this question that the Hampton Township retirees faced, which is we have an inevitable, very difficult set of fiscal choices in every location. Hampton Township, like I said, is not different than City of Detroit, which is not different than in Texas in every location.
Am I safe to say, no matter what changes come to Medicare, or Social Security for that matter, it more than likely will not affect current holders? And the way I say that is because we vote. Unlike Hampton Township, an employees group under the will, if you will, of the town, we vote.
I entirely agree with that, which is that it's one thing to say that there are nice ideas or changes, modifications to the existing structure. It's another one to execute them because the person voting for them is elected.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here as always.
Art, it's my privilege.
Maximize Your Medicare. Go to MaximizeYourMedicare.com. You can find out a lot more about it and about Jay for that matter, too. Thanks a lot, buddy.
All right, that's it. Be sure to subscribe to the Maximize Your Medicare podcast on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else where you digest podcasts. If you have your private questions, you can send them to me, JAE@MaximizeYourMedicare.com. Talk with you next time.